Hey everybody, welcome to Monarch. Today we're going to talk about literacy strategies that matter. All right, first I want to talk with you about how literacy strategies work. So, when you are first learning a new strategy that you can apply to all of your learning, not just ELA, you can use this in science, social studies. We're going to talk about a little bit in a minute, but you need to see models. You need to see how this kind of operates. How can you apply it to text, to a novel, to informational text, to some part of your text set that you might be evaluating and analyzing. So you do need to see models. So that's where your teacher comes in to model this. I'm going to be showing some additional videos that are going to help you break down each one of these strategies. But this one is your overview. So I want to throw all the strategies out at you at one time so you can see them. Some of them you may be very familiar with. You may have used these in the past. So we're just going to kind of briefly talk about some of those that are like the really big heavy hitters, because I am going to do individual videos. So this is your overview. So the gradual release of responsibility means these are things that I do to start with, then we'll do together, then you'll do on your own. And when we work that gradual release model, that's going to help you, one, be able to build some confidence and understanding about how do you actually apply this effectively. Two, you get to practice it to see how it all feels and works, and notice what you notice about your learning and your thinking process and your ability to comprehend and access text or access the writing. You have to be able to become self-aware of that during that redo process, because that way, if you do need support, you ask your teacher for clarification. You can always reach out to us too here at Monarch Educational Services at gmail.com if you would like additional video supports for this work. We also want you to be ready for your I do, because you are going to be a lifelong reader, speaker, listener, and writer. So we want you to be able to build these literacy skills. And when you're out there in the world, whether it's at work or in the military or in college or, in just your daily life, we want you to have very strong literacy skills. And that's why we want to teach you the strategies that matter. So, and this is for all teachers, but it's also for all parts of your learning. You need to understand that strategies go everywhere with you. It's not just you're going to do it while you're reading The Conjurer's Curse or Study in Terminal or maybe The Impossible Girl. So it's not like, okay, these are just for novels only. Nope, it's for your content area classes too. So social studies, science, your CTEs, your electives, everything that you approach in life as a learning task, you can use a strategy to help you understand it and break it down. This is my number one strategy in the world. Now, I want a t-shirt that says Google for good. I coined this phrase. I made this one up. This one's mine. And I've used it so much with my students, and it is a very powerful strategy. So let's talk about Google for good. Google for good is one of the first things I want you to think of when you are approaching a learning task or an assignment. So let me just throw one out there. If your teacher is working on a standard that is asking you to identify tone in a passage, and how does that tone, advance the plot or make it an understanding of character development, or how does that tone, impact the reader in those moments? If a teacher uses that word, you've got to understand, that's a checkbox word. That's one of those standard words that are going to be applied from 6th through 12th grade. So you go to Google for Good and you type in tone chart. Guys, trust me on this. When you do that, images are going to pop up. So you make sure you go to image and you just check all of the images that teachers have created, that reading specialists have created, and you will be able to have now a list of positive and negative tone words that will help you grow your understanding of how can you speak about these things. Sometimes we just need an anchor chart. And you're not always going to have access to that in a particular class. However, if you have your computer, always have a tab ready for Google for Good. So if your teacher, for example, is starting to talk about mitosis in the class, you're going to Google for Good that. You're going to quickly type in mitosis and you're going to go to images. And when it pulls up, you're going to have your images there because your images are going to help you to be able to remember and to connect. So if they may not show the image, don't give up. You go find it yourself. Google for Good. Now, Google for Good, of course, your teachers can use this and model this and show you how effective it is to build that bridge from your misunderstanding to understanding or just to add to your knowledge. And it's very quick now. It's very quick. Google for Good is quick. This is something that you can do independently. So I'm looking for a self-directed Google for Good explorer here. All right, so let's talk about Google for Good also for vocabulary. Now, while you're able, and I'm not talking about on a test or when you're having to do something that's, a formal assessment. I'm talking about while you're able, while you have the book with you, while you're able to investigate and have your computer open. Let's use our computer tech for good. Let's open up that Google for Good tab and have it ready. And you need to go to the Merriam-Webster website. You can always have that there. Another one that you can go to is thesaurus.com. You can have them both up. So you can set up your Google for Good tabs going across the top. So that means it's easy access. It's quick. You don't have to go and keep typing it in. So let's say you're working in The Impossible Girl and you're reading and you see, I'm just going to pull a word. I know you know what this word means. I saw the word distracted. Well, let's not get distracted and start trying to find words and go off. Okay, a conveyor. Oh, there's one, conveyor. Ava was relieved to see a conveyor. Well, what is a conveyor? So we're going to go to Google for Good. We're going to go to our website. We're going to look up the Merriam-Webster dictionary, or we're going to go to thesaurus.com. Now, I always start with the Merriam-Webster. When you go there, you type in conveyor, then you'll be able to see the different options of that. And if you want to go to thesaurus, it'll give you words that are similar that you would be able to use. That's very helpful when you're doing a writing task to help you show this dynamic in your writing vocabulary too. So it's according to which one you want to do. You can go very quick. You can have it set up. You can have it an app set up on your phone. So you can use Google for Good that way for your vocabulary. But you can also go to Google for Good and look up images of what is a conveyor. Now, when you start thinking about it, when you see, okay, a conveyor belt, okay, I see that. When I was in the mall, I read and I rode an escalator. Or when I was at the airport, I see those flat conveyors. Maybe it's a little bit more like that one. And I can now start making connections. When you're working your vocabulary, understand that your vocabulary can build conceptually, especially if you're working with a text set. And we at Monarch believe in text sets. So if you're reading The Impossible Girl, we're going to give you additional text sets where you may be able to see words and patterns of words, but words that kind of mean something similar to help you build characteristics of understanding Ava better or understanding the themes better in the story. So generative vocabulary just means that you're building those words conceptually over time, and they're like building blocks. So if you would like to keep a Google for Good vocabulary chart for yourself, by all means do that. We have that here on Monarch Academy too. So let's talk about CHAMP. CHAMP is an annotation strategy. And what does it mean to annotate? When you are asked to close read, that means that you are peeling back the layers one by one. You're not just reading it for surface. You're now going to closely read to kind of make connections and to bring yourself into the story to become a part of that reader, author, engaging with one another and learning more about the overall picture of a book, not just the page. So you're making these connections as you go. And when you annotate, that can help you start building those bridges from scene to scene or chapter to chapter. And one way that you can do that, you can see the pictures of the sticky notes, is you can use a sticky note strategy that I'm going to talk about, but you can use Champ. Now, Champ works for any type of text. So it's not just going to work in a novel. It's going to work in a short article, a newspaper article, an expository text. You can be looking at seminal documents or, historical documents, and you'll be able to do this with anything. Because you need to be aware of when you're reading, when you start to get distracted. Let's use that word in a sentence. When you start to get to the point where you start to lose focus and you might say, gosh, what did I even read? You chunk it. You go back and you find things that matter, 2 things that stand out. And I want to talk with you about how there's tons of things that can stand out for you. But when you're addressing things with people, when you're speaking about something, like, for example, you're telling about a movie, you're not telling about every single little detail that stood out to you. You're going to hit some major points. So you're going to talk about maybe 2 things. So why don't you start kind of highlighting 2 things or drawing attention to 2 things in your chunk piece? And then ask, why was that important to you? Make a connection, because the reason why it stood out to you is because you're trying to, formulate something in your mind to connect to that, like a bridge to the next piece. Like, think about when you are asking your why. Think about electricity. Think about your electrical poles. So you've got that one component. When you ask why, you're connecting it to those next matter pieces and then the next, because you're building that conduit all the way through the book to energize you through the book, to get you motivated, to keep you focused and in point, so you don't get distracted, so you don't lose interest, because the more you engage with the text, the more you'll comprehend it. So let me say that again. The more that you engage, the more that you will understand it. And a way that you can understand and engage is to do a strategy, an annotation strategy like Champ. Champ is easy to remember. You're always going to chunk pieces. You can chunk as you go. You can chunk beforehand. And you can put sticky notes to remind you where to stop, or you can draw stop signs to say, okay, I know I can get about this much, and then I need to highlight. Well, if you've got a library book and you're not able to highlight, you can use your sticky note strategy, and you can make your brainstorm list. We're going to talk about how all these kind of go together. But ask yourself, why did that matter? Make a connection, and then you can paraphrase it out loud. I would not want you to spend that time paraphrasing and writing that down, but as long as you can kind of paraphrase it out loud or in your head really quickly, move. So that's the Champ strategy. We're going to practice this one. This one's one of my favorites. All right. So our next one, I want to draw your attention to notice and note. Now, you can go out and you can look at all of these images online. You can purchase the books. They are amazing, okay? They're very detailed and they're for educators. But what I really love is the signposts for reading. So I love Champ. Champ is my #1 way to annotate. But I don't want to just give you one way to annotate and let you be, because you may need something like these signposts to help you when you're chunking. When I say highlight 2 things, you may go, well, what does matter in this? You can use like the signposts here. You can see that these signposts, the ones that are on one anchor chart, and of course, you go to Google for Good. This is where I found these from. These are not mine. I hit Google for Good images. So all of these are Google images. You can go to signpost. And when you see these fiction signposts, then maybe there'll be 2 things out of here that'll make you go, oh, that's important because that's a tough question. Or, oh, that is repeating. That is an again and again. Or words of the wiser. There's a character in here that's really trying to direct and point this character in the right direction, or giving them a piece of advice, and it's important because now I got to see, is my character going to take it, or are they going to be stubborn and do their own way? So that's where your inferencing skills can come in. You can see here, you can type in notice and note for nonfiction, and this also gives you a key, a way that you can focus in your annotations. So you can do a think aloud about this as a model with someone else, and you can say, oh, which one is this? And you can say, okay, I'm reading a nonfiction. Okay, these are quoted words. So how does this impact this? What is it trying to do? They're trying to take this person, this expert would had these quoted words, and that means that matters to this person because they picked this person. So maybe they're credible, maybe something that they say is relevant and timely. And then you can say, okay, I understand why those quoted words matter. And then you can go out and you can take those quoted words and then you can say, do I debunk those or are those really credible? And does that flow logically with their claim? And so it can really help you when you're reading to start noticing things. And that's why I love the way that the author set up Notice and Note, because it allows you to be able to have a way to talk about text, okay? So maybe you need to pull these up. You can pull up these signposts on Google for Good and help you as you're working through any text, guys, any class, any text, okay? Or you can make yourself up a sheet where you can carry it around like a bookmark. And I have some of those, bookmarks, templates that you can get off of canva.com. You can create those yourself. All right. One of my favorite things is to draw. So I came across this strategy because this is something that I do. So a way to annotate, you should see me note taking when I'm in a meeting. Okay, so this is real life. I will draw key points. I will put things in margins. I will make arrows. I will do stars. I will underline. I will make things sideways. I will build images as I'm note taking. It's just something that I do. When I go back and I look at my notes, I know everything that happened. I can tell the story with the pictures. This might work for you. You may love to annotate by drawing, but I do want to encourage you that it is not for you to spend hours getting the eyes right and aligned and to fix that nose and that mouth. It is a scribble. It is a stick person if it's character. Because it's fun. You can scribble, but it also needs to be fast. So if you like the draw strategy, you can create a drawing notebook. So for example, in The Impossible Girl, I have The Impossible Girl sitting right beside me. So that's why I'm using, chapter 31. So you could have, 15, 16 pages. You could have front and back. And for each chapter, you could have your white piece of paper. And you could do, or if you like it lined like me, because I do like to write some words around. I don't just always draw. I do drawing and a combination of writing, brainstorming list. You can use your notice and note and draw those out. There's so many ways that you can do the draw strategy, but you have your paper beside you and you're drawing as you go. So it's got to be quick, okay? It cannot be like you're doing a masterpiece. You're not drawing for, to be the next, they definitely don't even look like Picasso. I mean, seriously, guys, my drawing looks ridiculous most of the time. However, it helps me comprehend and it activates that part of my brain. So I will tell you that when you're making symbols, that's your way of making connections. Then try to do a think aloud after. Because then you want to go, okay, this mattered, this, and this. And now you're doing a paraphrase. You're doing the summary. So if I go back a little bit and I go to Champ, do you see that bottom one that says paraphrase? If you're doing any of these strategies, go and do some of those think alouds at the end because you're paraphrasing it. You're pulling it all back in together, which is really a great summarizing skill too. All right. Biggest question ever, best question ever, ask why. It's not what color was Ava wearing. It is how did she get there? No. It's why does it matter? And you keep asking yourself that question because that is going to have you probe a little deeper, think a little outside of just what is on that text dependent right there. And that's very important. So sometimes if you say, I don't know what questions to ask, My teacher is asking me to generate questions and I don't quite know. I'm going to give you these resources. Go to Notice and Note, because Notice and Note actually gives you questions under each one of the signposts that can help you generate thoughts around that piece, that signpost, that stopping point. So for the memory moment, when you find one and there's a flashback and there's a memory, why is the memory important? There's your question that goes with it. So if you need those for self-guided, directed, if your teacher's asking you, those are great questions. Go to the signpost and always look for, why does it matter? That's my question to you. Why does it matter? All right. So what you need to do is you need to be able to share what you're thinking, how is your reading going, and you need to become self-aware from the beginning of a story to the end. You need to set goals around your learning and have check-ins. You can do this self-directed, but this works really great with partners. It also works great with your teacher directing you with this, especially when you are working on standards. So let's say you are working on theme development, and I'm going to just ask you the question before reading a study in terminal. Can you pick out themes in books? Is it easy for you? Is it okay? Is it according to the book? Is it hard to identify themes? If you say that it's easy for you, then you can address that standard with more confidence. And when you're looking for themes, then you look at, well, then how does this theme change and develop and refine itself over time? So then you can take your standard to that next level by showing textual evidence of those themes emerging, developing, and refining. So when you're looking at any novel, when you're looking at the Conjurer's Curse, themes are going to start to develop within the first 3 chapters of a novel usually. So that is a very specific time point where you need to be able to start organizing your thoughts around themes. Do you have that skill level? Can you do that independently? You need to know that before going into the novel, if that is a standard of focus for that novel. If your teacher's like, we're going to talk about themes throughout this novel, there you go. Your teacher's told you, I want you to go back to Google for Good. I want you to open it up. I want you to type in common themes found in literature. Yep, you heard me. Find them, have them, because there are common themes. When you have the list, it can help you to start, organizing your thoughts, and it can help you springboard into new ideas. And when you start to see them in the Conjurer's Curse, and you see maybe the topic of acceptance right away, is someone accepted or not accepted, you can understand how maybe that is going to emerge, develop, and refine itself over time. So the topic of that is acceptance. Well, what is the theme? It's going to be in a theme statement. It's going to be in a sentence. So that's important for you to be able to do. And you can use your own thinking about your thinking, and then your Google for Good to help you as you move through text to become a stronger reader. Because the more you practice these skills and use Google for Good, the stronger you're going to be. Now, Brainstorm Lists are my favorite. Okay, I have an app on my phone, and it's called Our Groceries. And right now we've got hamburger buns, Jif, and tea. And we're just going to keep adding to our grocery list. So in life, we all brainstorm as a family. What are some things? We make a list. What are some things that we might need upcoming for the week? And we'll put it on. Now, I like Peter Pan peanut butter, but we already have some. But just for the sake of me doing this for my life, I'm going to put Peter Pan peanut butter on here because I call that the real Peter Pan. So application for a brainstorm list is just tremendous. And it's meant to be quick. You saw how I added to my list. The thing about a brainstorm list is that there's really no wrong answers. They're all of the thoughts that just start coming at you bombarding you all at once, just make them all down. Now, you can do this on a sheet that you can have a Google Doc. You can have a Google Doc ready. There's multiple ways you can do this. You can have a Google Doc ready, and you could call it your brainstorming list for your unit. I would promise you, keep it as a unit if your teachers are studying things by units. Now, if they're just doing a novel study, and let's say they've picked the Conjurer's Curse because you love fantasy, and you get to read the fantasy book of your choice, and you're going to pick the Conjurer's Curse, I want you to create a brainstorming list for the Conjurer's Curse. And when it comes time for you to talk about something about the Conjurer's Curse, you can go back to that brainstorming list, maybe throw in some ideas down in there that you've been having as you're reading. Maybe you want to research some things. Maybe you want to dive into these concepts. Maybe you want to watch a video about sailing. You know, there's so many things that you can do when you're reading a book and you're like, oh, I don't want to forget it. Keep yourself a book brainstorming list. This can help you. You also need to remember that brainstorming list, because if you go to a grocery store and you don't have your list, ask anybody. You just feel like, what was that? I know I'm going to miss something. The list can help you. It's like a scaffold, guys, that's there for you to support you, because let's just get real. We can only hold but so much information in our brain at one time. So we want to be able to pull back that list and be able to refer to it when we're having discussions, when it's guiding our learning. And you can do this throughout all disciplines, all classes. Keep yourself your brainstorming list. So my son likes to handwrite all of his. He doesn't like to use tech for his brainstorming list. He writes them all down. He said he likes that feeling of accomplishment when he crosses them off. At one point in my life, I used to put my list on sticky notes. And when I finished with all of them, I balled them up and I would trash them. And it was like, yes, accomplished. These were my goals. However, if you're talking about an academic task that's going to go across many days, I would advise you to keep that Google Doc running record of that, okay? All right, so let's talk about cast. All right, I love this one so much. And I want you to think about how we're being called to be fishers of men, and how you take that net and just throw it out wide. And then you're pulling in your fishes. I want you to think about, how can you read something like this big? That's big. It's a wide open sea, right? And to be able to analyze it and talk about it. What are some things that really do matter in a book like this? Because your teachers may say, I want you to be able to analyze these texts, analyze what we're working on. You can use cast, and you can bring it in, and you can make it, easy for you to be able to talk and discuss text. And I have more videos that's about cast in your support document. So all you have to do is find that Google Doc, make a copy of it, keep it in your Google Drive. So that way you can pull up cast when your teacher is asking you to analyze text. Now, I have seen people use Tipcast. I have seen people TPcast, however you say that one. I've seen people use Swift, but I like cast. Because if you can understand the connotations and the words and how words are used and their impacts, if you can understand the attitude and the tone, if you can identify the switches between positive and negative, and that could be positive and negative events, positive and negative character changes, or negative to positive, and it's going to switch. If you can identify those switches, that is going to help you find themes. The switches lead to the theme. And that's really the lessons that your author is wanting you to take away from that book. So when you're analyzing text, these are really the top hitters, the 4 things that the teachers are going to ask you to kind of look for. Connotations, the way that words are used, the layers of words, the word choice, the imagery, figurative language, all of that kind of stuff. The attitude is like the tone. The switches are those positive and negative plot points. And then you've got your theme. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about cast, but if you can remember cast while you're reading and start to notice it throughout your novels, you're going to just become so proficient at being able to understand and then be able to share out and discuss and write about text. Okay, now we're getting into some writing frames. Now, I love ACEs. Now, I want you to practice ACEs when your teachers are asking you to write an argument, write a paragraph. It's formal. If they're asking you to write a formal piece, which means you do not use the words I or my, I like this because those are like book reviews. Those are completely different than what I'm talking about. But if your teacher, for example, is reading a study in terminal with you and you are on websites for youth and mental health and you have to write a paragraph about something you found on that resource on that website and relate it back maybe to a study in terminal, how can you speak about that textual evidence and how can you cite it? You can use ACEs to help you formulate. It helps you to organize your thinking with flow, and it's easy. So we're going to talk a lot more about ACEs. So let's talk about the tag approach to when you are giving feedback. When someone is asking you to review their work, let's say you have a writer friend and they want you to read and beta read for you, and maybe they've written a poem or maybe they've written an essay and your teacher has tagged you guys up to partner together. I always start with telling the writer something that you like. Find it. Then ask the writer a question. Because it's not always your way. They have their own perspective and they have their own approach. So you may want to just ask one of those questions, maybe a big question. Maybe they talked about a memory moment, but they didn't tell why does that memory matter. So when I tell you to ask a question, remember back there those notice and note questions. This is how you can go back and look and say, well, maybe they brought up something from one of the elders in the book that was trying to give them some advice. Well, if that's the case, you can look at, that words of the wiser, look at that question and use that one to help you. So you've got scaffolds here for supports. Then maybe if you do have a suggestion, give a positive suggestion. Don't say rewrite this whole thing because it's terrible. No. Don't do that. That's not positive. And that's you trying to rewrite their story that matters or their perspective. Give a positive suggestion to help make their story possibly stronger. Or maybe you could give them some of those sentence frames to help them build a stronger sentence when they're talking about their claim, or give them a new website to check out to add to their research. So give a positive suggestion. All right. Every time you do something, I need you to reflect. And reflection goes back to metacognition, thinking about your thinking. Reflection needs to happen every time. So when you're doing an assignment, when you begin writing, you start thinking, what do I need to help me access this assignment? Do I need the sentence frames? Do I need ACEs? Do I need further research? Do I need to kind of go back and reread? What is it that I need? So you're thinking about your thinking and you're setting yourself up for success. And then when you finish that assignment, don't just turn it in and say, I'm done with it. I'm never thinking of it again. I want you to reflect back and I want you to say, what tools in your toolbox helped you? Did it help you with time management? Did it help you with sentence building? Did it help you with organization? What else was it that you found that you can now add to your toolbox? Did you find something new or a new way to access your information? Give yourself a place to document this. So just like you have a brainstorm list, you can have a reflection journal. and you can draw emojis. How did that experience make you feel? And if you're still drawing the red face with the smoke coming out of the ears, then that means you need to reassess where you are in your learning, become self-directed with your thinking process, like become aware, say, what is it that I need to do? What do I need to do to access text? Do I need to study up more, watch some more tutorial videos? Do I need to go back in and practice more? Do I need to have some more modeling? That remember that I do, we do, you do. You're not going to necessarily get something that very first time. Don't beat yourself up about that. That's normal. We need models. We need ways to see how this stuff works. But you need to be able to reflect on where you are. And that's also emotionally with this work. Because when people talk about I've shut down, I don't care anymore, I don't care about this assignment or this work, there's feelings that are attached to that, and you need to be able to address those and understand where they're coming from. And it could be that you need to build up your skill a little bit more. That's great. That means that you have an opportunity to learn something new, to continue to improve yourself. Because you're not trying to improve, to be better than your neighbor, or you're not trying to improve to be better than the person that sits in front of you, or you've got some kind of race for comparison. You're trying to get better than you were the day before. And in order to do that, you need to do your metacognition. You need to think about your thinking. Then you need to be able to reflect and then address what you need to do for that next time. All right, let's talk about writer's quick responses. This is very important, and you can do this self-directed, okay? So when you read a chapter, so let's go back. We're going to go to Conjurer's Curse. And Conjurer's Curse has a prologue. So let's say, okay, the prologue is pretty short. I'm going to read this prologue, and I'm going to start at page 1, and I'm going to finish at page 8. And I'm going to understand, why did this author in this fantasy book decide to put this prologue in? What does it tell me? What do I notice in this prologue? If you want to, go ahead and give yourself one of those self-generated questions. Give yourself a question and just paraphrase and write it really quick. Because you may find that as you advance with your champ, remember champ, we're going to go back. As you go through and you use champ, use draw, or you use cast, you may get to here and say, I just really want to collect my ideas in a way that it's just a quick summary. And if you do that, you're doing it to connect yourself from prologue to chapter 1 to chapter 2. And I want you to understand that you need to look at the standards. You need to look at a focus. You don't need just to be open-ended with your writer's quick responses. They do need to be quick. You can do these in 7 minutes or less. You need to set a timer. So whatever you get in 7 minutes or less, you go with it and move, because this is you, okay? You'll build that stamina over time. So when you're looking at what you can get from 7 minutes or less, focus on something. Maybe in that one, at the end, you realize, okay, this really tells me a lot about the background of this character. So I've learned a lot about where he's from, his society, their expectations, their prejudices and biases. And so now maybe you want to talk about, how does that impact that character? How's that going to shape and mold that character? What belief system is he going to have? What is he going to believe about himself because of that? So you're focusing in maybe on character right there. Or you focus in on society, his surrounding, his culture, his upbringing. Pick something and focus when you do a writer's quick response. Because a writer's quick response is not just you writing a summary. He did this in the jungle. He hunted that in the jungle. His mother told him this in the jungle. His guardian mother. Don't do that with a writer's quick response, because you're missing the point of what a writer's quick response is for. It's for narrowed, focused writing. So you can go back and you can look at the standards. There are 6 reading for literature standards that you really can hone in on and do well. There's 10, but if you really take the first 6 and you really look at those first 6, that can help you build those literacy skills. And we're really focusing on the first 6 first with Monarch Academy. Then we're going to build the rest. But trust me when I tell you, focus, focus, focus on writer's quick responses. And you're going to get that lens. You're going to build those skills on that particular focus the more you practice this. And you write it. You handwrite writer's quick responses. You just write it quick. You could turn a writer's quick response into what? Let's talk. Maybe you want to do a writer's quick response, make it a brainstorm list. What can you get out in 7 minutes? But this one is focused, okay? Whereas a brainstorm list isn't necessarily focused. It's wide open. You know, you're putting things that, you know, a grocery list that you need from the freezer department, from the meat department, from dairy, from your produce. It's all over the place. But with a writer's quick response, you're really narrowing it in, okay? All right. So, guys, I want to tell you that I've appreciated the time that you've taken with me to go over all of these strategies. You guys know that I'm Jen Lowry. Should probably say that at the beginning. I'm the president of Monarch, our publishing company, but I also run our Monarch Academy. And I want you to be able to reach out to me, monarcheducationalservices@gmail.com. And I want you to know, 1, that you matter. 2, literacy matters. And 3, we're here to support you on your literacy learning. So look for more videos where we're going to break apart all of these strategies. All right, guys, I hope you have a wonderful day.